Josh, what is the meaning of this?
The meaning of what, Scott?
You have been making derogatory videos about the greatest show on earth, Fear the Walking Dead.
I don't really understand what the issue is, Scott. You know I don't like Fear the Walking Dead.
But I always thought that you were joking.
You thought I was joking?
Yeah, I know you British guys have crazy sense of humor. I thought it was like some kind of ironic joke, buddy.
Hang on, you thought I was joking. I've been making videos criticizing Fear the Walking Dead for the best part of 2 years.
Well, now that I know how you really feel about my masterpiece, there's only one way to solve this. With a knife. Scotty's gonna get ya.
Whoa, what the hell is wrong with you, man? Put the knife down.
Scotty's gonna get ya. Oh, was that the doorbell? I'll be back to deal with you in a moment, buddy.
Jesus Christ, he has absolutely lost it. I need to find somewhere to hide quick before he gets back.
Josh, I'm coming.
Shit, he's coming. I need to find somewhere to hide quick. The VR headset. I'll hide myself using that.
Joshy, here's Scotty.
I'm not Josh. I am his friend, Bosch.
Oh, where's Josh gone?
Josh has gone away and will never return.
How disappointing. I was gonna stab him so good.
Bye.
You have a nice day, buddy. Ta-ta.
Whew, can't believe he fell for it. Well, as I got this thing on, I might as well check it out and see what the fuss is about.
Hello everyone and welcome. In this video I'm showing my thoughts on The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, a VR game set in the Walking Dead universe. I'm playing on the PlayStation 4, but this game is also available on PC. So without further ado, let's get this review done before Scotty G gets back. In terms of pure experience and feeling like you're a part of the Walking Dead universe, I believe that Saints and Sinners is the best The Walking Dead game there is right now on the market. I still think that Telltale's The Walking Dead series has the better narrative, but in terms of gameplay and actually feeling as if you're part of the Walker Apocalypse, no, The Walking Dead game has managed to do it better. The decision in producing this game exclusively for VR platforms plays a huge role in helping build the fantastic sense of immersion that I don't think could be achieved via traditional means. The VR headset allows the game to do away with dated tropes and mechanics, allowing the player to feel as if they are actually there in the moment, rather than just pushing some buttons to make a character move on the TV. For instance, one classic game system that Saints and Sinners is able to do away with thanks to VR is traditional menus, with everything instead being accessed in real time. Want to grab your knife? Well, just reach down into one of your holsters and take it out. Need to use your bow? Then reach over your right shoulder to get it. Maybe you need to check the map or have a look at the objectives. In that case, grab the notepad from your right t-shirt pocket and flick through the notepad to find what you want. In a bit of a pinch and need to heal yourself? Well, grab your backpack by reaching over your left shoulder, put out a bandage and wrap it around your arm. Hell, even things like weapon durability can be viewed by simply looking at a weapon you're holding rather than jumping into a menu. Simply put, the way in which Saints and Sinners handles its inventory is brilliant. I can't overstate how much I prefer this to the traditional menu and equipment system found in most video games. It sounds weird to say, but I also love that there isn't a button that you can press to quickly cycle between your weapons, as having to physically grab the weapon you need from your person just adds to the overall tension of the game. There were so many times, especially during my first 3 to 4 hours with this game, when I found myself panicking when drawing weapons, often finding myself dropping my melee weapons on the floor or even dropping my bullets as I desperately tried to reload my gun and failed whenever a walker was heading towards me. I know to some people, perhaps those who haven't played many video games, that Saints and Sinners methods of storing and choosing equipment might not seem like much of a big deal. But let me tell you, once you've played it, you're going to find it very hard to go back to traditional non-VR games in which you have to sift through pages and pages of static menus. Immersion was clearly a big priority for the developers when making this game, as it very rarely if ever impedes the player from actually playing it. I mean, the only true cutscene that takes place during Saints and Sinners is the introduction sequence. Aside from that, everything story related is presented in real time, with it naturally progressing via in-game conversations or audio logs. This is the opposite to the Metal Gear Solid series, in which Hideo Kojima likes to interrupt the player with hour-long conversations every time the protagonist moves 5 steps. The only negative side effect of having such a devotion to player immersion is that I kinda missed out on the majority of the story because of it. Truth be told, I found it really hard to concentrate on the narrative when there was usually so much else going on around me. The majority of the narrative is told through documents that the player finds. These are normally intel files or some piece of propaganda. Once the player grabs these, an audio file plays detailing exactly what is written on it. The issue I had is that surviving always took precedent for me over listening to these snippets of story. I'd find myself wandering around scavenging, and then I'd have this audio file playing in the background in which the leader of the tower group was criticising the other in-game group, the Reclaimed. And to be honest, by the time it finished playing, I realised I hadn't actually taken any of it in because I was too focused on, well, not being killed. Women often joke that men can't do 2 things at once, and in my case this is absolutely true. Either I sat there nice and still, listened to the audio file and risked being bitten by a zombie, or I cracked on doing my thing and ignored it whilst it played out in the background. I'm sorry, but I just can't do both. Even when I did come into contact with other survivors, either directly face to face or over the radio in quieter areas where there was less going on around me, I still didn't really focus an awful lot on what they were saying because I still found myself distracted by the fantastic VR playground that Saints and Sinners has created. You can see here from this clip that instead of concentrating on what Casey was saying to me over the radio, I spent most of the time trying to hit this microphone at the bobblehead toy instead, like some kind of hyperactive 3-year-old. Yeah, okay, in this instance I can't really blame this on there being too much happening at once. This is just me having a low attention span and being easily distracted. To be honest, my missing out of the story didn't stop my enjoyment of the game one bit. I made the conscious decision to play as an arsehole throughout the game anyway, so the overarching plot of the two factions fighting each other wasn't as important to me as trying to stay alive was or acting like a villain was. Speaking of acting like a villain, my god, I acted like such a prick during my playthrough. For example, early on in the game I came across a side quest where a lady told me that her husband was bitten and had turned, but she wasn't able to put him down, so she asked me to do it for her. I asked what was in it for me and she replied saying she'd give me a combination to a safe which had something valuable inside. Now of course the player can comply with her wishes, put down her zombified husband and collect the reward from her, or you could do exactly what I did.
Gone. I never even got to say, what do you gain threatening me like this?
Yep, I killed her and grabbed the code off her dead body. What? Don't judge me, this is The Walking Dead. She should have known better than to trust strangers. Major spoilers now, so please skip to the time on screen if you don't want to be spoiled. During the game's finale, there's a huge decision when it comes to the fate of Casey, a guy you've been communicating with from the start of the game. If I remember correctly, Casey is stuck in some kind of water reserve throughout the game, and he promises that if the player helps him, they can have access to the armory in said reserve. When I finally got there, Casey told me that the only option was to now flood the armory in order to save his life. Well, you can guess what I did as soon as I saw there was the option to move the flood switch from the armory to the comms room. Yeah, I killed the poor guy just so I could take the goods from the armory. I'd like to say that I regretted killing him, but that would be a lie because I didn't. I mean, there was a lot of rare shit in the armory that will come in handy for me post-game, so I'm sorry Casey, but it had to be done. I'm a big fan of games that give the player choices in regards to how they play, and Saints and Sinners definitely lives up to its name. You can play as the Morgan-esque, all life is precious, dutiful saint if you want to, or you can just be like me, a bastard reminiscent of the Walking Dead villain the Governor, taking whatever you want regardless of who it hurts. Or you could play as a mixture of anywhere in between these two extremes, it's up to you. When it comes to the actual gameplay, Saints and Sinners' game cycle is divided into individual days. The player begins each day at their camp in a creepy graveyard, being able to explore one area of the flooded New Orleans of their choosing each day, before then returning to camp and doing the same thing the day after. More areas become available as the player progresses through the game. There are story objectives and side quests to complete, but you can carry these out at your own leisure. If you want to try and complete every story quest as quickly as possible, you can. Or if you want to spend as much time scavenging and completing side quests, that's a viable option as well. Personally, my approach was to spend as long as I needed scavenging between story missions in order to make sure I was adequately prepared for what was to come. On the topic of scavenging, let it be known that you will be scavenging a lot in this game. There's a recycling bin in your abandoned school bus turned bedroom, and literally anything you find can be placed in said bin and turned into a material of some kind which can then be used to craft items, medicines, weapons, as well as upgrading your crafting stations. And by anything being recyclable, I mean anything. Broken phones, old shoes, razor blades, blocks of wood, anything you find lying around can be recycled to make into some kind of valuable material. I'm not sure if this is some kind of social commentary that the devs slipped into the game about the need to recycle, or if I'm just reading too much into it. Anyway, I never thought that I'd be so happy to find something as innocuous as a plank of wood on the floor, but as resources in the world dwindle, a simple plank of wood will make you very, very happy. And no, that's not some kind of weird innuendo. On the other hand, it can be quite disheartening when you find yourself searching through what seems like hundreds of cupboards in a house only to find that they've already been ransacked. But then again, it also does feel great when you do finally find that bottle of medicine that you so desperately need. In terms of difficulty, this game is pretty unforgiving, and I say this as someone who enjoys challenging games such as Dark Souls, and even I still died a lot playing Saints and Sinners. The difficulty continuously ramps up the longer you play. The more days you spend in game, the less supplies there are available, meaning you shouldn't ever find yourself getting to that point where the game gets too easy. You really need to make use of the items you gather as best as humanly possible. I spent the majority of this game with half health or less simply because I couldn't find any medicine to get my max health back up, nor could I find the materials I needed in order to be able to upgrade my craft station to unlock the medicine upgrade. I mean, when I finished the story, there was still a ton of upgrades that I hadn't even unlocked, such as Michonne's katana, which I still can't wait to use. Thankfully, you can carry on playing after you complete the main story to your heart's content. Alongside the amount of items available decreasing as each day passes, the amount of walkers increase, as do their varying types. Their tactics also become more unpredictable, as herds will begin knocking down walls in order to have a chance of tasting your sweet flesh. Things start out easy enough with just your bog standard walkers to deal with, before introducing armoured walkers who can't be stabbed in the head, as well as poisonous walkers who you need to kill from afar in order to avoid being poisoned. My personal favourite, however, are the walkers who have their guts hanging out. Not because they're anything special in terms of enemy design. Now, the reason I like finding these walkers so much is because once you've killed them, you can reach into their bellies, take their guts, which you can then use to cover yourself in walker bloods and innards. There's a PlayStation trophy for using Guts mode 15 times, and I'm really surprised that only around 3% of players have unlocked this on PS4, seeing as this was my go-to get out jail card on so many occasions. As useful as the Guts mode is, it does have its downsides. For instance, if you act suspicious, i.e. pull out a gun and start firing whilst pretending to be a member of the undead, well, the walkers are going to know you're not one of them, which anyone who's watched The Walking Dead or read the comics would expect to happen. Also, if you're wearing walker blood and you start sprinting, the blood washes off from you immediately, taking you out of Guts mode, which was obviously implemented to stop Guts being so overpowered. Otherwise, you'd just be able to sprint to the exit every time without alerting the undead. One of the scariest in-game moments I experienced was when I found myself on next to no health, stuck on the second floor of a warehouse full of walkers. I had no weapons or healing items left and decided that my only viable option of escaping was to use the Guts trick to sneak through the walker-infested first floor to get to the exit. One thing I forgot to mention thus far is that being covered in walker blood also makes it harder to see as the screen gets darker as soon as you apply it. And it didn't help that this particular warehouse I was in was pitch black. So here I was stumbling through a dark warehouse, nearly dead, trying to remember where the exit was, the walkers all screaming in my ears, all whilst trying not to bump into any of them or do anything too suspicious as not to alert them. It really was heart in the mouth stuff, and I had so many of these memorable moments whilst playing this game, some more of which I'll mention later in this video. Despite the fact that I became more confident in dealing with walkers as the game progressed, walker encounters never really stopped being scary for me. There was always a chance I'd miss my shot or my weapon would break or a walker would surprise me by grabbing me from behind. An audio cue plays every time a walker has you in their sights, and although some might find this a bit annoying as they could argue that it breaks the tension, I'd argue the exact opposite. If anything, it makes things more tense because there's nothing scarier than knowing a walker has spotted you but not knowing where they are. On the subject of things being scary, this passageway under the church always scares the shit out of me every time I have to go through it, even though I know there's normally only 1 or 2 walkers in there to deal with, simply because of how dark and terrifying it is. I hate this place. Now, of course, this wouldn't be a Walking Dead game without also having to deal with other bloodthirsty humans, and you'll often find them holed up inside compounds or buildings, normally defending a valuable piece of intel that's vital for the progression of the main story. These enemy HQs, for lack of a better term, can normally always be approached in a number of ways. So for instance, if you want to go in guns blazing and try to kill everyone, well, you can. Or if you want to try and stealth your way around the premises, well, good news, they all usually have at least one secret entrance you can use to gain access, be that a hole in a wall or a pipe or a ladder to climb on. I pretty much always opted for stealth because I never really felt like I had enough ammo or weapons to take down an entire place by charging for the front door. Although even when I did opt for the stealthy approach, 9 times out of 10 I still ended up getting into a fight, albeit not as deadly as a fight I would have gotten into if I had stormed through the front door like an utter lunatic. I'm not exaggerating one bit when I say that some of the best moments I've ever had playing a video game have occurred when infiltrating an enemy camp in Saints and Sinners. I remember one instance when I was inside an enemy house in which all my guns broke and I was low on health, out of bandages and medicine, so I found myself sneaking around the place, knife in hand, slowly taking out every enemy guard one by one like the Predator. Boy, was my heart racing during this segment, but it felt awesome. Aside from guarding buildings, you can also find other humans offering random side quests or needing help. You can also find them fighting with one another, fighting the undead, or fighting against one another as well as the undead. It should be noted that some of the side quests available in this game are pretty amazing. In one instance, I found myself searching in what I assumed was a creepy abandoned house for supplies, only to head upstairs and find some members of the Reclaimed who had captured a member of the Tower group. The Reclaimed member explained that the Tower threw his daughter out of the community because she wasn't deemed useful to them and was seen as a burden, which resulted in her death. And here the Reclaimed had captured the man responsible for following the tower's order to kick her out of the community, with them asking me to finish him off. It was up to me what to do next. I mean, if I wanted to, I could have saved him. I doubt I would have been able to do so without pissing off the Reclaimed, but it's certainly possible to do that if you're that way inclined. Anyway, I stabbed the guy in the head. Shortly after, I found myself temporarily teaming up with the Reclaimed as we took the fight to some more tower members who were in the area. It was really cool randomly stumbling across this mini story in what I thought was just an abandoned house, and I wonder how many more of these unique side quests I might have missed out on during my first playthrough of the game. I've spoken a fair bit about the enemies you're encountered during this game, but what about the actual combat itself? Well, as expected, you've got your melee weapons as well as your guns and your bows. It's up to the individual what weapons they use, and it's all about personal preference really. Personally, aside from my first couple of hours of gameplay, I tended to stay away from the guns. I found they were too noisy and attract too much attention, which is exactly why characters tend to avoid using them on the Walking Dead TV show if they don't have to. I also found a lot of the larger rifles just didn't fit in with my playstyle. Having to use both hands to hold them is a definite drawback to me. At least when I'm holding a pistol, I can use it in one hand and hold a melee weapon in the other, which I can use just in case an enemy got too close to me or if my gun ran out of ammo. In addition, it seems like most of the larger rifles have extremely long reload times, with some requiring you to pull back a lever on the gun or take out a magazine and put in a new one, which is too fiddly for me when dealing with a charging walker or a human enemy. Finally, it seemed like my VR setup just didn't like it when I used many of the larger rifles, with my character's arms spazzing out, often aiming in completely the wrong direction no matter how much I tried to correct it. Instead, my go-to setup was to carry a melee weapon in each holster, usually a knife or a machete, and then I would carry a couple of bows for taking out enemies at range. I much prefer the bow to a gun or a rifle because it's silent, arrows can be gathered after you fired them, allowing them to be reused, making ammo conservation easier, and I actually found I was a hell of a lot more accurate with a bow than most of the larger rifles which I struggled with. Again, whether this is something to do with the way my PlayStation camera is set up and the area I was playing in, I'm not quite sure. On the whole, I really enjoy the feel of the combat in this game. I just mentioned my fondness of the bow, and I think a big reason why I enjoyed using it so much is due to the actual physical sensation of holding the bow in one hand, grabbing an arrow from your ammo pouch with the other, putting the arrow in the bow and putting it back and then releasing to fire. It just feels so satisfying going through this motion, and even more so when you pull off a headshot with this weapon. As far as melee combat goes, you have to fight like you really mean it. And that's to say, if you nonchalantly move the controller with the force of a 90-year-old arthritis sufferer when attacking an enemy, then that attack just isn't going to kill them. If you attack a walker or a human without giving it enough oomph, then don't expect that weapon to penetrate them enough to deliver a killing blow. You've really got to attack with some force, especially when you're using a two-handed weapon like an axe or the game's equivalent of Lucille. As you can guess, this results in the game becoming quite the workout. It says on the main menu that you can play this game sitting down, but I tried this and for me it just didn't work. I couldn't grab anything from my holsters and I just couldn't move around properly. From my experience, you need to be standing up in a big empty space, and even though I played in my mum's living room, which is a reasonable size, I still found myself bumping into things, and I kept hitting the ceiling light when I was doing an overhead attack with a two-handed weapon. This game made me work up a sweat. That probably won't come as a surprise to many of you, as anyone who's watched my channel previously knows that I can't handle the heat and do sweat a lot anyway, but it did get to the point whereby I decided that I had to play this game topless because I was getting so damn hot. So yeah, here's a clip of me setting up the VR system with no top on. Don't say I don't ever do anything nice for my fans. Now before I wrap this video up, I sadly need to talk about a few bugs and small niggles that I encountered during the game. Sadly, this happened to me more than I care to admit. The game crashed and kicked me out to the PlayStation dashboard 5 or 6 times over the course of my one playthrough. Luckily the game does autosave a lot, so it's not as if you have to start the entire game again, but I did sometimes find myself losing 30 minutes of progress, which is pretty damn annoying. I was also never able to work out how to store rifles, which was another reason why I didn't use them. They were too large to put in my holster, but then when I tried to put them over my shoulder, they just wouldn't go in the bag either. I also unlocked an upgrade which would let me hold 2 over-the-shoulder weapons, but I could never reach for the one over my left shoulder. It would always grab the backpack instead. I'm guessing this is intentional, but it is kind of annoying that I could always quickly grab the weapon over my right shoulder by reaching up my right arm, but if I wanted to grab the left one, I would always have to go into the backpack itself. There was also a side quest that just kind of bugged out for me. In said quest, I was asked by this guy named Devon, who was previously a member of the Tower but who had defected to the Reclaimed, to deliver a letter to his boyfriend who was still a member of the Tower group. Because, as previously mentioned, I was being a complete bastard during my playthrough, I told his superior officer in the Reclaimed that he was a traitor for still communicating with a person in the Tower. His boss told me he would kill Devon, and the game made it clear to me that with this conversation the mission was complete. However, immediately after this, I managed to make contact with Devon's boyfriend, gave him a letter from Devon, and received a letter from him addressed to Devon. I went back to Devon, who wasn't dead but was still very much alive, handed him the letter, but nothing happened. I don't really know why the game allowed me to talk to Devon's boyfriend and go through with the handing over of the letters once I'd already squealed to his boss if nothing was to come of it. Maybe this isn't a bug and maybe Devon's boss kills him later. Perhaps Devon knows something is up, as he does appear to be flinching when I went back to him. But then again, how would he know anything was up? He's literally in the same spot where he was when I left him 2 minutes ago. It just seemed weird to me that the game told me the quest was finished but then let me carry on through with most of it anyway. Also, this next point isn't a bug, but be warned that this game does have some very long load times, especially when booting up for the first time. On the whole though, Saints and Sinners is just so damn enjoyable that I can overlook these faults. It managed to keep me on edge throughout the 15 hours that it took me to play through it once to the end. I never found myself feeling bored or feeling that the game lacked challenge thanks to the constant threat of more enemies and less supplies as each day progressed. There's still a hell of a lot that I haven't discovered or unlocked after reaching the ending, not to mention the fact that there are multiple endings encouraging multiple playthroughs. Like I mentioned at the start of this video, whilst Telltale's The Walking Dead contains the best Walking Dead video game story, Saints and Sinners is the best pure Walking Dead experience in making you feel like you really are in the thick of the Walker outbreak. Of course, this is largely helped by the game being on a VR platform, but there was still room for error on the developer's part. But I'm glad to say that they've really managed to do a fantastic job with this game. I don't think you necessarily have to be a Walking Dead mega fan to enjoy this. It's largely set apart from the rest of the Walking Dead universe, so I think anyone who is a fan of survival horror games will have fun playing it. In summary, whilst there might seem to be some questionable games in terms of quality currently on the PlayStation VR store, Saints and Sinners definitely isn't one of them. This is a damn fine game which does the Walking Dead license proud, and if you haven't yet had the chance to play it, I hope you do get the chance to do so in the future.